Kaboom! Hey, what's going on, folks? Ty, Bench Clear Media. All right, so today I'm going to talk about a topic that it feels a little uneasy when you're talking about it, but I think it really impacts the hobby and it needs to be addressed. And that's debt, and how debt is driving the inflation, the price increases, and also is putting us in this weird spot, this dangerous spot in the hobby. So I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But two things really fast. Number one, if you are liking this topical kind of off the cuff conversation, give us the thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment. We'd love to know if these are impactful for you. It seems like they are, and I definitely enjoy doing them. Obviously, I come from more of an economic background, so I prefer that type of topic. But second, if you didn't see the announcement video a couple days ago from Mike, we are putting on the 2021 version of Hobbypalooza. So if you didn't participate in Hobbypalooza last year, put on by us here at Bench Clear, it was a 3-day event filled with just a ton of awesome content providers across YouTube, across the internet, and we all just came together to put together essentially like 30 hours straight of content, back to back to back. Topps was behind it, Panini was sponsoring it. It was just a super fun event, and so we did that because there was no national last year, but this year we're doing Hobbypalooza 2021 as a precursor to the national in person, and I think you'll really like some of the topics we have set up, some of the great content providers that are going to be doing hour-long special edition episodes, and it's going to be a fun event. But you can go to thehobbypalooza.com or just subscribe to Bench Clear Media and you'll see plenty of updates. But it will be July 9th, 10th, and 11th, but mainly 10th and 11th. So anyway, wanted to make sure you knew about that if you didn't already. All right, so let's talk a little bit about debt. So debt's an interesting thing because I started thinking about this because I had a conversation with some friends just about them getting into the hobby, and they were curious about my thoughts. And that's happened a million times, I feel like, in the last year and a half. But as we were talking, I asked them, I said, hey, so how are you funding your kind of entrance into the hobby right now? And a couple of them were like, well, we're kind of putting it on credit cards and we're paying them off as we sell things. And then the other few were kind of using some free cash flow or some of the checks they got from the government. And then a few others were just completely free cash flow. But it got me thinking just about those that are coming into the hobby that are funding their adventures, their business with debt. And everyone's in a different situation. And I think debt can be used to your advantage for sure, especially those that put it on a credit card and they pay it off every month. But as I thought about it, I thought, let me ask around a couple more folks that I know are new and see how they're funding their entrance. And sure enough, it was what I expected, credit card funded, entrance into the hobby. And I think what we saw very quickly in the recent pullback in prices is that when you fund your inventory with debt, especially short-term debt, you don't control the narrative. You're not able to control kind of how you want to sell things, the price you want to set. You're completely at the mercy of the current market price. And if the current market price pulls back considerably, you have to pay back that debt or that interest is going to eat you up. And so what we saw, and we're continuing to see, is that this compounding effect of a lot of the rise in prices has been funded by short-term debt, and it's squeezing people and it's putting them in that situation where they don't have the ability to hold on and kind of make sure they sell and be patient with prices. And it's really interesting too, because if you look at kind of the data that's coming out, and there's all kinds of sources for this. I can put some links in the show notes if you'd like me to. But consumer debt is at kind of that fickle, kind of up and down, chart that has been very interesting the last few months, but really the past year. And there's this dichotomy between ages 35 and below and 35 and above. I fall in the category of 35 and above, but you're noticing that consumer debt is increasing considerably year over year, quarter over quarter, month over month for those under the age of 35. And what you're finding is that not just consumer debt like credit card and short-term debt, but mortgage debt and auto debt is increasing like exponentially. And the crazy thing is you're noticing like delinquencies starting to really impact those under 35 versus those over 35. In fact, those over 35 mortgage delinquencies are down considerably versus those under 35 and mortgage delinquencies are up considerably. I say all that because there is, and that's a lot of the new folks coming into the hobby fall into that category of under 35. And you're starting to see like the rent moratoriums be lifted, the student loan forbearance periods being lifted. And so this free cash flow that was existing, you're seeing like the government start to pull back a little bit on the money being provided for COVID-19 relief and unemployment benefits. States are pulling back on that from an unemployment perspective. And so disposable income is now being squashed. And then when you had cards and you have wax sitting on people's credit card statements, they have no choice but to go pay those off. And so I think you're going to start to see that really impact over the next few months and prevent sports card prices from rising. And the other thing to consider too is a lot of the new submissions that have been thrown into the queue at PSA and BGS. Maybe not so much SGC or HGA because you got to pay up front for those, but a lot of the inventory that's sitting at PSA and BGS, and I've already talked about this before, but that's essentially a short-term loan that these new collectors are sending in hundreds of cards, base cards, whatever they are, because they know they don't have to pay for them until they're graded. Well, guess what? PSA is catching up on that, and a lot of these cards are getting ready to be, invoiced or just charged. And for folks that realize they need to either clear balance on their cards or they don't have the funds for them available on their cards, like it's going to create a massive bubble in terms of just like outstanding inventory that either PSA can't clear off their books or people are getting back into their hands and they're like, geez, prices are already down. I got to pay this debt off. I can't afford to hold this. And so they're going to immediately hit the market, so you have to think about that as this inventory is cleared off of PSA's books and it's starting to send out to customers. And this is not everybody, right? But I think there's a good percentage of people that they're not prepared to receive cards that are down 40% from when they submitted them, and now they're paying the grading fees and they can't carry that debt because of all their other disposable income being squashed and inflation affecting a lot of the other prices that we've already talked about in our inflation video. So I think that's going to create an even worse situation because you're going to have a lot of PSA graded cards coming in and you're going to have a lot of unavailable buyers because they don't have the ability to purchase the cards they would have maybe purchased when the market was really hot 6 months ago. So again, food for thought. Now, a couple of the stats to know. So I run these numbers and I'll show the charts here. So over the last 8 months, you're starting to see a lot of cards and sports pull back in price. Basketball cards are down nearly 50% on average. So if you look at the average price, the PSA 10 price per card from November of last year to and actually more like February of this year to June of this year, like the average PSA 10 rookie card price, and so for the top 200 players in the NBA, it's down 50%. And it's down almost that amount for baseball and a little bit less for football. But PSA 10 pop reports are up 35% for baseball for those same cards, 45% for basketball, and 37% for football. So rising supply, falling prices, which if you fill out the rest of the equation, right, means just a decrease in demand is what's causing that. And the demand decrease is probably being caused because of a lot of things, but mainly because of the opposite of the FOMO effect, right? And also just the lack of available funds for people to spend. So don't get skewed by a lot of the headlines you see with Tom Brady's rookie card selling for $3.1 million, or Wayne Gretzky's card selling for $3.75 million, or whatever it is. You got to be very careful and know the situation that the market's in right now. And if my takeaway to you would be, first off, be very careful about if you're new to this hobby, don't fund a lot of your investments or forays into the hobby for flips with a lot of debt, because you're asking for trouble and you're not controlling the narrative. Second, as a buyer, just know that the situation is going to get a lot better for you in the coming months as this gets a little worse, because it's going to continue to pull back. It's just going to. There's just too many things working against the sports card market right now, where if you are a buyer, you're sitting on cash to acquire inventory, acquire a wax, you can be more selective, you can be more aggressive. Maybe it's not so much with new stuff coming in. I get it, it's not printed as much, and there's a different argument for that. But for cards that have huge pop reports, and for products that that there's plenty of it out there, be patient. I think you'll see more consistent returns and better prices if you're just patient with things. So again, there's going to be players, there's going to be products that do better and outperform the market, of course, right? And hopefully we can talk about those in the coming days and weeks. But just know, if you're patient with what's happening in terms of debt influencing the hobby, I think you can be very selective and find really good deals over the rest of this summer. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that helps. I'd love to know your comments. What do you think about debt? How often are you funding your purchases with debt, short-term debt? And what are you seeing from the rest of your collecting circle? So anyway, have a great weekend.
If you've been in the hobby for more than a day, then you know how fast the sports card market moves. There are now more options than ever to buy, sell, and research your cards. One of the most frustrating hurdles in the hobby is the fees when selling your cards. You know, those other popular marketplaces, the ones with their average seller transaction fee of 10%, the ones that don't have the seller's interest in mind. Wait, what? Who would do that? Well, hold on to your horses. No, not those horses. Welcome to the Card Flip, a place where we want to provide a simple alternative to buying and selling cards. No clutter, just you, graded cards, sealed wax, and the easiest of transactions. So what do you say? Are you in? Great! Welcome to the Card Flip, the seller's marketplace.